police here in Japan have the rights to stop you, check your ID, and ask you questions just if they think you look suspicious.
Even if you're Japanese, it's still a little bit, embarrassing to be completely naked in public. So I personally feel much comfortable at the private onsens. See, these are the things that I would never notice because I've been growing up and living in Japan for almost all my life. Minasan konnichiwa and welcome to Let's Ask Shogo. So recently I've been receiving a lot of DMs asking me some tips on traveling in Japan. However, unfortunately, I'm a person who did grow up in the US for 6 years, but otherwise I have been living in Japan most of my life. And because I've been living here, everything I know is basically based in Japan, so I don't understand the differences. So it's really difficult for me to give you tips about traveling to Japan. So today I'm going to be taking a look at Paolo fromTOKYO's video about travel tips in Japan. I'd love to learn more about what people who are originally from outside of Japan come to Japan, what kind of things they find out, what are the tips that they would like to provide the audience, and I'd love to give you my opinions or talk about my experiences. But one thing though, I believe the video that he published is about 3 years ago. It was published in 2018, so some of the information might be a little bit old. But including that though, if there are any changes, I'll love to provide information about that as well, so I hope you can look forward to it. And by the way, I have worked in the traveling tourism industry for 4 years before starting my YouTube channel, so I personally am really looking forward to the borders to open, and I'm thinking of starting a cultural experience here in Kyoto again, so I hope you can look forward to more information coming out in the future. In this channel, you can take a closer look at Japanese traditional culture, tips on traveling to Kyoto, and social problems in Japan. So learners, lovers of Japanese language and culture, be sure to subscribe to enjoy more content. それでは動画を見てまいりましょう。Let's get started.
So first thing, let's talk about cash in Japan.
Cash
Probably coming
in Japan.
from a lot of modern countries, you think that you can use credit cards because, you think Japan is a modern country itself. But what you'll find is that a lot of places here in Japan won't accept credit cards. Strange, right?
Crazy,
I mean, who
isn't it?
really wants to carry around cash in their pocket all the time? But the reality is, in Japan, a lot of people still carry around cash. In fact, I probably have $10,000, $20,000 in my pocket at any given time just because I have to use cash so much.
$20,000
But
in your
before I
pocket
get
would be
into
amazing.
all of the places that don't accept credit cards, let me share with you some places that do. Major department stores or retailers, mid to upper end restaurants, convenience stores, amusement parks, airports. Now some shops that probably don't accept credit cards are small mom and pop restaurants, local bars, street food vendors, a lot of restaurants who serve set meals during lunchtime, small retailers, and some taxis, although more and more are accepting credit cards these days. Even some fast food places don't take credit cards, so you should be careful. Also, if you're planning to travel outside of the city, be prepared to bring enough cash because it's even more likely for places not to accept credit cards. As a local tip, I find that my Visa card is accepted at most places, while sometimes my American Express is hit and miss. Also, if you want to minimize carrying cash around, you can get a Suica card or a Pasmo card. It costs about 500 yen, and you can load it up to 20,000 yen in cash, so you can use it at a lot of places, but mainly it's used for train stations. So you don't need to buy a ticket each time when you get to the train, and it automatically calculates the fare when you get out. Just tap in and then tap out. But you can also use it at convenience stores, many street vending machines, taxis, train kiosks, some restaurants, shops, and even electronic stores like Big Camera accept it. Now, if you're looking to withdraw cash in Japan, I suggest 7-Bank ATM, Japan Post ATMs, and Prestia Bank, as they're best at handling foreign cards.
So about cash in Japan. Again, it's been about 3 years, almost 4 years now since this video has been published, but unfortunately, I guess the situation is getting a little bit better, but it's not as much as I would hope it to be. I mean, he's talking about places in Tokyo mainly in this video, and even in Tokyo at this time, there were a lot of places where you couldn't use credit cards. Maybe right now, maybe it would include the e-money as well. But outside of Tokyo, like where I live right now in Kyoto, like my home city, Hiroshima, there are tons of places where you can still not use credit cards or any of the e-money either. So I receive a lot of DMs, for example, telling me that I'd love to communicate with the local people, for example, go deeper into the culture and challenge myself and go to, for example, the very local izakayas or the restaurants that is not the very touristy spots. But if you really want to do that though, you need to grab your cash because a lot of places are run by the elderly and they do not know how credit cards or e-money work. So it's best, as he explains, it's always best. No matter where you are, it would be best that you have some cash on you. Otherwise, if something happens, you can't pay for it. And the best place to get the cash is, I would definitely recommend 7-Eleven, the convenience store, absolutely, because they're literally everywhere and the ATMs that they have are very, very convenient. They like literally convenience stores, right? They are really, really convenient. You can basically use almost any kind of card, even the local banks outside of Tokyo. You can use any kind of card, so they're really, really convenient, absolutely. And also when he talked about the credit cards, that you can use Visa cards, but not too much of the American Express, this is absolutely true too. In Japan, from what my experience, I feel that Visa cards and MasterCards are rather accepted, but American Express absolutely not. You know, I am actually running a company, but my first company card, my business card, was actually an American Express. But because there were so many places where I couldn't use it, I actually got a new Visa card for my company just recently because I couldn't use it at so many places. So yeah, as he says, Visa cards are absolutely recommended. And also the Suica cards, the Pasmo cards he was talking about, these cards are even today very, very convenient in Japan. Of course, again, there are the e-money. Like in Japan, I think one of the most popular ones will be PayPay. There's an application called PayPay, which I use too. But PayPay can't be used for example, riding trains and such. But Suica, Pasmo, they're really amazing because you can just literally use it to ride the trains, but use it to buy drinks at convenience stores or the vending machines. They can be used almost anywhere. And I also get a lot of questions talking about the travel passes to travel through Japan. Of course, the travel passes are very cheap and it does help you out in terms of keeping your budget low. However, I do see a lot of people who get stuck in the travel passes basically. So your plan where you go gets based on the travel pass. So you have to go along the lines that you have a travel pass of. So it might be a little bit cheaper, but it might be a little bit inconvenient. But these Suica cards, they're really, really, really convenient. You just buy them. They're sold literally at any station almost. You charge it, you can go anywhere. Very, very convenient. How convenient it is really close to the travel passes. But Suica allows you to go anywhere. The Pasmo allows you to go anywhere you want. So I personally believe if you are a person who rather travel freely a little bit more, I would really recommend Suica because it's just so convenient. I actually have the application version inside my phone.
So eating and drinking
Number
while
two,
walking on the
eating and
street.
drinking
So
while walking.
in many respects,
Okay.
it's considered bad manners to walk and eat at the same time, even if you get
Yes,
food on the
that's
go,
true.
like sandwiches or onigiris. This rule may sound
Onigiri
weird to
rice
you,
balls.
but for Japanese people, eating a sandwich is the same as eating a big bowl of pasta while walking. Yeah, weird. If you want to
I
eat or
guess
drink
so.
in public, the best thing to do is stop and chill on the side of the street. But all in all, walking and eating won't get you in trouble, but people will stare at you and look at you as if you were brought up badly. Or maybe even the older generation actually will say something to you. But there's always exceptions to the rule,
That's a
and one
scary
of those
part.
exceptions is tabe aruki spots. Tabe aruki means to eat and walk. So these are places like Tsukiji Fish Market. These places are intended for
yes.
people to buy
Very
food
popular.
and eat on the street, and as it's named in Japanese, okay to walk too. But one thing you should know is that even in these areas, some shops don't allow you to walk and eat. But it should say on the storefront just to let you know. Festivals are another exception, and as more shops like Starbucks offer to-go items like coffee, you'll see more and more Japanese people walking around with coffee cups in their hand, ultimately changing the culture of Japan. The real issue why it's thought of as bad manners in Japan is because it's considered meiwaku, which means it bothers other people. People here are sensitive with strong food smells, and it would be the worst if you spill food or drinks on them by accident.
So this is absolutely true too. Eating and drinking while walking is considered a taboo in Japan. Actually, there are some people even saying that it's a little bit rude to even eat in front of the convenience stores. Even if you're on the side of the road, for example, and you're not bothering anyone, there are some people who say that that is considered a vulgar act too. But there is a debate between the younger people and the elderly about this. The younger generation would think, well, if you're not walking, what's the problem? There is no chance of dropping it or bumping into anyone else or spilling it and such. But the elderly in general, they did not grow up with such a culture. Eating outside in the first place is considered a bad thing. And I personally feel that he was talking about the tabearuki too, right? Where you can actually buy things at street vendors and you can eat while walking, where it is okay to eat and drink. I personally feel that there's less and less places where you're allowed to do that. And that is due to the COVID pandemic. Because if you are allowed to eat and walk anywhere, you'll have to take off your masks, right? But Japan still has a very, very strong mask culture. So the people, the shops around the tabearuki areas, they don't want people to be randomly taking off their masks everywhere. So recently, even the originally tabearuki places where you could eat and drink don't allow you to do it anymore, unfortunately. But to be honest though, for example, if it's a really hot day in summer, like right now it's August and it can go up to like 38, it could even go up to 40 degrees Celsius with really high humidity, like 80–90%. In that case, I would say that at least drinking is completely fine. Eating, there might be some people that are more, what should I say, sensitive to it and such, but drinking should be completely okay. If someone tells you that you shouldn't drink on a really hot summer day outside, you should just tell them that I need this water and I need to drink it immediately. I don't think you should mind those kind of people.
So drinking in Japan.
Oh, drinking in Japan.
The drinking age here is 20
Did you actually
years
get a
old.
beer?
I was so surprised when I first came
it's
here.
20 years old.
I was like, wow, you can actually drink here at 20 years old. So you can literally go to
US is
any
21,
convenience
right?
store and they'll sell you alcohol and not ask you how old you are if you just look like you're 20 years old. In fact, there are still beer vending machines on streets, in hotels,
there are
etc.
some.
They don't even require any proof of age. But recently in Japan, they've made it a little bit more strict. Let me show you. I select my beer, I go to the counter, the clerks scan the drink,
Oh, do you have to press
the
the button?
register
Oh,
sheets
yeah.
and ask
That's what I
if I'm
thought.
over 20 years old. I tap yes, I pay, and I'm all good to go.
But on the flip side, I think there's a lot of countries where you can drink from an earlier age, right? Like 16 or 18 years old. I don't have an image that in Japan you get to drink at a really earlier age. But anyways though, as he was saying, I guess the rules in Japan has started to get a little bit more strict. Like for example, if you go to an izakaya, places where they would provide the alcoholic drinks to you, they will check your age. Like even me, I'm 28 years old, and sometimes depending on like what kind of clothing I'm wearing or how I look, there are some izakayas that will check my age, for example. So those, I think the shops, the restaurants, because they will have to take responsibility if some kind of trouble happens, they will probably check your age much more than the convenience stores. But even at the convenience stores though, 2022, I think they are a little bit more strict than maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But the weird part is that we still do have the vending machines though on the streets, so that's not going to be stopping anyone from buying alcohol. So there is this very weird contradiction here. And also I think another unique thing about drinking in Japan that a lot of people often talk about is that you're allowed to drink outside. I think that's probably the most unique part about it, isn't it? I think in a lot of countries you're not allowed to drink alcohol outside. Like in Japan, you can drink it at a local playground, for example, a park. You can drink it on trains. Yeah, there are literally people who are drinking beer on trains, for example. So if there's a beer you want to try at a nearby convenience store, you could just grab that and take it on a train, or take it to a park that you think is beautiful, watching the cherry blossoms, for example, or the autumn leaves in autumn. You can drink it there too. So I think that's one fun thing that you can experience in Japan if you're interested.
So let's talk about
Number 4,
tattoos at the onsen.
onsen.
Japanese onsens, aka hot springs,
Yes,
are one
another
of the
important
coolest
topic,
experiences
isn't
you can have in Japan. Unfortunately, many Japanese onsen prohibit people with tattoos from entering the facility because of the stigma associated with tattoos in Japan.
Something you always talk
Yakuza,
about.
or also known as organized crime, are known to have characteristic irezumi, also known as tattoos. Since a lot of these onsen facilities don't want Yakuza going to their establishment
Japanese gangs.
or scaring their customers, they made like a blanket statement saying that anyone with tattoos, small or large, can't enter the place. Although it may sound
small,
unfair,
too.
it's Japan and it is what it is. So before making reservations at an onsen, make sure that they accept tattoos. One note though, if you're going to onsens with a private room, or private onsen
it's
hotels
Michael-san.
where you don't have to share the space with strangers, then it
They're
should be
married
okay
yet,
to have
right?
tattoos as long as you don't show anyone in public. So for those of
No,
you
Wolfie
that have
isn't even
tattoos,
born
don't
yet
worry,
at
I'm
this
not
time.
gonna leave you hanging. There are a few spots in Tokyo that are cool with tattoos. I have a full list on my website, so I'll be sure to leave a link in the description of the
Wow.
video, so you can check it out for yourself later.
Yeah, tattoos is something we always talk about when we talk about Japanese culture. So what he explained is just simply absolutely correct. Japanese onsen do not accept people with even the smallest tattoos, unfortunately, because it has a connection to the Yakuza, which are the Japanese gangs. Historically, having tattoos, those huge tattoos on their backs, was a symbol that that person belongs to the Japanese gang. It means that once you step into their world, there's no way back. So a lot of the onsen facilities, because they're afraid of losing their normal customers, do not allow any of those members into the onsen. And even if you're not a member of the Yakuza and you just have it for fashion, it's impossible to distinguish from a normal Japanese person, so they just don't accept anyone, unfortunately. And as Paolo was saying, there are some places in Tokyo, I believe as he was saying, and there are some places outside of Tokyo too where they accept people with tattoos, but me personally, if you were to ask my opinion, would I recommend those places? My answer would be no, because it does mean that those places are places where in Japan, the Yakuza members or people who might be causing trouble in society might be going to, right? So for example, if you have a family with you, would that be the safest place to go? It's really not guaranteed. Of course, I'm not here to say that those facilities are very dangerous and are filled of criminals and such. That's absolutely no. Now, of course, it will be safe. I've never heard of any serious trouble going on in those facilities, but still, I would not recommend it for your safety. Then what could you do? As he said, the private onsen would absolutely be my recommendation. I've made a lot of videos talking about a lot of the rules in the onsen facilities too, and they are very, very troublesome. Again, onsen are generally public baths, so there are a lot of rules to be able to, what should I say, get along with the people that you take baths with. But if you go to the private onsens, you don't have to mind about your tattoos, you don't have to mind about all of those rules and such. So generally, even as a Japanese person, I really enjoy those private onsen much more than the public ones because I just get to relax a lot more. It is still, even if you're Japanese, it's still a little bit, embarrassing to be completely naked in public. So I personally feel much comfortable at the private onsens, and I absolutely recommend the private onsens to you too.
All right, Wi-Fi and internet in Japan.
Wi-Fi
now, this
internet.
is actually one of the things that a lot of
important thing.
people ask me questions about in the comment section, and it's actually one of the most things that always concerns me when I go overseas. So what you need to know
You'd be
is
really
that
worried
all of
about
the
it,
major
right?
cities, like Tokyo, have relatively fast internet in Japan. I even stayed
Yeah,
at
Tokyo,
a capsule
at least.
hotel in Tokyo, and their Wi-Fi was super fast. I think this should be enough for most people. Nicer hotels outside of the city should have Wi-Fi, but maybe at a slower speed. But if you're anything like me and need to be connected all the time, then there are some local options. Number one, Starbucks. On the free route, luckily Starbucks provides Wi-Fi to all its customers, and there are so many Starbucks all throughout
There's a lot of
Japan.
people
But I
working
found that the
inside
speeds are
the
fast
Starbucks
or
and
slow
stuff, so-
depending on the amount of customers on the network. You can try other cafes, but it's hit and miss. Number two,
Okay.
city Wi-Fi. Another
Yes,
free
city
alternative
Wi-Fi.
is to use the city Wi-Fi. This is only available
always on
at
the
the
list
major
of Wi-Fis
stations
on
or
your
areas
phone.
like Shibuya, Shinjuku, Harajuku, Odaiba, etc. Connecting is fairly easy. I'll leave a link to all this information in the description. Now, if you need to be connected at all times, then you're gonna need to go the paid route. So the first paid option is to rent a portable hotspot Wi-Fi and carry it around with you. Now, I think it's the easiest thing to just go to the airport and rent one out there. Another option is to get a SIM card for your unlocked mobile
Prepaid
device.
SIM
You
card.
can go to any major electronics store and they should carry it. Again, check the description for more details.
So again, Paolo is mainly talking about Tokyo. Now, Tokyo is obviously the capital of Japan today, and it's a very, very convenient city. So what he explains about the very fast connections and such, and as he said, is definitely very different outside of Tokyo though. Even places like Kyoto where I live, Osaka nearby, these larger cities, compared to Tokyo, all of these internet Wi-Fis are much weaker and much inconvenient. So again, Starbucks, some of the cafes, those restaurants, maybe even izakayas, usually do have their own Wi-Fi that you can use while you eat and drink at those places. But again, they're not that strong, and if there's a lot of people out there at the same timing, you might not be able to use it in the first place. And also these city Wi-Fis, again, in Kyoto too, they do exist. Kyoto has the Kyoto City Wi-Fi and such, but it's not that convenient though. There's a lot of stuff you have to do on the phone for connections, and there's a lot of requirements. They have to fill in forms and such. So I hardly used it before in Kyoto, unfortunately. So I would personally recommend, if you just want to get rid of all the stress of all of this, going to find the Wi-Fi and having to fill in all the requirements, I would definitely recommend you getting the portable Wi-Fi or getting a SIM card, absolutely. And the portable Wi-Fis do, from my experience, I've met a lot of people, travelers, while working in the tourism industry. A lot of people told me that the portable Wi-Fis do not work as well sometimes, especially if you, for example, are traveling with a family and all your family members are trying to use one portable Wi-Fi. It tends to get very, very slow. It might seem a little bit more convenient to just have one device and everyone can share the internet. Of course, that is supposed to be possible, but is it fast enough? The answer is unfortunately no. So for example, if you want to be absolutely sure that you have very fast internet, the SIM cards are absolutely the best option. So I guess I would recommend the SIM cards the most. The second will be the portable Wi-Fi, and if your budget is low and you don't want to get any of the two, there is an option of using the city Wi-Fis. But if you go outside the cities though, for example, if you want to go to the countryside areas where not too many people would usually travel to, there's usually no Wi-Fi that's that convenient. So I would still recommend you to get the SIM cards or the portable Wi-Fi, just to be 100% sure.
Smoking in Japan. Check this out.
Smoking.
It says no smoking area here, but right next to me, there's a smoking section. Smoking in Japan may catch a lot of you off guard, especially if you're coming from the US. But if you smoke, then you're in luck, because Japan has some of the most friendly laws for smokers. But that may be changing in the near future, which I'll tell you about just a little bit later. First of all, many izakayas, which are sit-down restaurants designed for drinking, allow their customers to smoke throughout the entire restaurant and don't usually provide non-smoking sections. If you want to go to an izakaya, simply put, you're gonna have to deal with a secondhand smoke. Nice restaurants may prohibit smoking, but some of them still accommodate their smoking customers. So if you want to eat at that kind of establishment, you should really ask before you make reservations. Some family restaurants and other establishments do attempt to divide smokers and non-smokers, but sometimes you'll find that there's nothing really separating a smoking table and a non-smoking table, other than maybe a tiny vent. And one of the biggest surprises I had when first living in Tokyo is that smoking inside is actually allowed while smoking outside is prohibited. It didn't make sense to me at first, but when you consider how busy the streets are in Tokyo, the last thing you want is someone bumping into you with their cigarette butt. The city though, wanting to accommodate smokers, had set up smoking areas throughout the city so those smokers who need their nicotine fix can do it safely on the street. Isn't that a great idea? But to the non-smokers out there, you might be pleased to hear that they passed a law that make it more strict to smoke cigarettes inside. If they want to have a smoking section, to have it separate from the non-smoking section, otherwise they can't have a smoking section at all.
So Paolo did guess correctly. The smoking laws in Japan have absolutely gotten a lot more strict. I think it was 2022 was the big change for smoking rules and laws in Japan. Currently now, I don't know too much about Tokyo, but at least in Kyoto, where I live, there's many more places where you are not allowed to smoke at all. The izakayas, the restaurants. I actually am a little bit surprised, for example, when I go to a local izakaya or a restaurant and sometimes they still allow smoking, I'd be like, wow, I didn't know such places still exist. So they are getting absolutely a lot rare. And I do not smoke at all, so I'm very, very happy about the change in Japan. But for those of you who do smoke, there are the designated smoking areas as you're explaining in the video. So you could just quickly look up on the internet. There are websites where they will tell you where those places are in each city. So you could just quickly look them up. They're usually near the major stations of that city. And I have personally heard before the reason why that you're not allowed to smoke outside, but you're more allowed to smoke indoors is because, again, there's a lot of people walking outside. Also in Japan, there are a lot of buildings that, especially like in Kyoto where I live, there's rather a lot of buildings made from wood. So in that case, if you accidentally, for example, drop a cigarette butt, that could lead to a fire. But if you're at an izakaya or restaurant, even if you're smoking indoors, you are sitting in one place, so there's less risk of accidentally dropping the cigarette butt, right? So that's the reason I have heard before.
Riding the train in Japan. Now, if you guys have seen any videos on Japan, you've probably seen these crazy attendants pushing people on the train. And let me tell you that the struggle is real and it really happens, especially during rush hour. Try to avoid riding major city commuter trains during the weekday between 8 to 9:30 in the mornings, 5:30 to 7:30 in the evenings, and the last train, which is usually around midnight, and the trains reek of alcohol. Peaks may vary from train line to train line, but this should give you a rough idea of when to avoid the trains. Also, what a lot of travelers don't know is that usually the first or last cart of the train on weekday mornings are reserved for women only. This is because Japan has a huge problem with men groping women on trains, especially when they're packed on the train like marshmallows in a game of Chubby Bunny. Look for the pink signs on the cart, which also indicate the women only time. In this case, 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
But one thing that I would want to say is that the crazy amount of people, being all shoved together and all stuffed, the other cities outside of Tokyo isn't that bad though. I mean, in Kyoto too, some of the train lines at certain timings could be very, very packed as well, but definitely not as much as Tokyo. I've only been to Tokyo like 3 or 4 times, but whenever I go to Tokyo though, I am so surprised that even those small stations always is filled with people, and I'm like so shocked every time. So I would say that the trouble of avoiding certain times and such would usually only be about Tokyo though. I mean, like around again 8 a.m. to around 9:30 a.m. around there is the rush hour for going to work or going to school and such, so it is best that you try to go earlier or after to ride the trains even outside of Tokyo too. In Kyoto, I would definitely not recommend it either, but still it wouldn't be that crazy though. I think this is something that's you need to be concerned about only in Tokyo. And about the women's only cars, as you were explaining, it's something that's very obvious though. It's literally on the wall, it's on the ground, it's on the windows, so it's impossible for you to miss out and not find it. And it's usually only on weekdays, so even if it still has the same stickers on it, on weekends, men can ride them too. And unfortunately, as he explains, and I've made a video talking about it too, it's due to all the chikan wall station on trains, and it's a way to try to prevent it. And by the way, even if you, for example, accidentally ride the women-only cars on weekdays, you won't be caught by the police or anything. You just leave the car as soon as possible, even once the train starts moving. So you don't have to worry about it too much.
Love about Japan is the non-tipping culture.
Oh,
so
another topic we always
talk about is if you go to a
yeah.
restaurant or if you take a taxi, you never have to pay a tip. The price on the bill is the actual price you pay, and it's one of the things that I deeply appreciate. You save so much time not having to calculate the tip, and the service here is almost every time pretty good. At the same time, there's one thing you guys need to know is that there's hidden fees in some of the restaurants. It's called a toshidai, or in English, the table charge. Prices vary from place to place, but ranges from 300 yen to the upper end of 1,000 yen per person at nicer places. You'll actually be able to spot it right away. When you sit down at the table before ordering, drink your food, the waiter will bring you a small dish. Once you see the small dish, then you know there's going to be a table charge. It's very Japanese in a way. They'll make you pay for a table charge, but they'll actually give you something in return. General rule is if it's a fast food place, ramen shop, or restaurant serving set lunch courses, then you don't have to worry about the table charge. Otherwise, expect a table charge. But you really need to be careful of the sneaky izakayas that make you order a certain number of dishes as well as charge you a table charge. They're usually the ones advertising in front of the stores for a ridiculously cheap amount of money, like 1,000 yen, all you can eat, all you can drink, or something like that. Even places like this advertise 500 yen pizzas or have a table charge. And they'll make you also order one drink. So no matter what, you are paying at least 1,000 yen to eat at the place. I know it's not much to some of you, but I still think it's a bit sneaky.
Yeah, the non-tipping culture is again something that we really often talk about, right? One thing that I want to confirm with you guys once again is that a lot of people talk about tipping is rude in Japan, but I've talked with my team members when we reacted to a different video, but tipping in Japan isn't rude. It's just simply that something that we don't do and we're not used to. So again, the people working at the restaurants or, for example, convenience stores or anywhere, they will be confused and don't know what to do with the money because they can't calculate it into anything, right? So they don't know how to handle it. So that's the reason why they would give it back to you, but that's not because it's rude. They just simply don't know how to handle it. So that's one thing I want to confirm again in this video. And also about the otoshi culture is something that you absolutely need to know about before coming to Japan, because I have a lot of friends who work at restaurants and there are foreign travelers come to their restaurants and they get very angry because they don't understand why they have to pay extra all of a sudden. But it's the table charges at some of the izakayas and in most bars too. It's usually places where you would stay longer for a few hours, for example. As he was saying, if it's just a fast food restaurant where you'd only stay about, I don't know, 30 minutes and such, they wouldn't charge you with table fees. Basically, it's kind of like the tip fee. Of course, it might not be as expensive as how you would tip in other countries. I'm not too sure about the price and such, but I guess it is still a little bit cheaper, but the restaurants will not inform you about it. They will not tell you that we're going to be taking extra money for you. You have to take a look at the receipt afterwards and you know about the price after that. But usually it's just only around 500 yen. The maximum table charge I've ever heard of, maybe just a few thousand yen at a really expensive bar and such. But compared to what you will be ordering at the place, is nothing expensive at all. So if you understand what it is, I think you'll be completely fine. And one last thing about this, Paolo was talking about the people who would try to basically lure you into their izakayas or bars. If you go to, like, even in Kyoto, center areas where there's a lot of izakayas and bars where you can get some alcoholic drinks, there are people, the shop staffs outside trying to go and talk to people walking down the streets and try to ask, are you looking for an izakaya tonight? Would you like to come to our place, kind of thing, and would come and talk to you. And a lot of people get caught because they show you like a really cheap price, like as he was saying, like 1,000 yen, 2 hours all you can drink is like really, really cheap, right? And then you accidentally follow that, and it tends to be much, much more expensive than finding a restaurant or an izakaya on your own. When I was a student, a university student in Kyoto, I have actually followed these men outside who are trying to catch customers, outside, and I've never ever had a pleasant experience before. So there are some people who try to catch tourists too, and you would think, wow, this person is so kind, giving me information about such a cheap option. You should completely avoid them as much as possible. They'll just keep on following you for a while, keep on talking to you, but you should just say, no, I already have a reservation. I already have a reservation for somewhere else, I'm sorry, and you should just walk away. That would be my recommendation too.
Let's talk about hotel fees in Japan. And if you guys have looked and searched for hotel rates, you might have found that it's quite expensive, but what you may not know initially is that more often than not, hotels in Japan charge per person instead of per room. So I could see having a minor add-on charge for an additional person staying at the room, but doubling the rate for an additional person seems a bit excessive to me. I don't know about you guys, it may really depend on the country you're coming from. But I'm from the US and we really don't have rooms doubling in rate when you have 2 people versus 1. The only time this makes sense to me is when you go to a Japanese ryokan or onsen hotel and they include dinner and breakfast as part of the room rate. In this case, an additional dinner and breakfast would need to be prepared for that extra person, hence doubling the overall cost. Anyway, so I don't see Japan changing their business practice anytime soon, so it may be affordable to look at other services like Airbnb for couples and families. Or for singles, you might want to check out capsules or youth hostels.
See, these are the things that I would never notice because I've been growing up and living in Japan for almost all my life. So I guess the way you're charged of the hotel fees is different in every country. In Japan, as you was explaining, usually it's up to how many people you stay with. Even if it's one room, staying with just one person or with 6 people, it would be completely different. And in the end, I think he recommended Airbnbs or some of the, for example, the private ryokans and such. But even in those places, I believe depending on the number of people, it will get a little bit expensive. I understood it as even if it's just one room, if for example, there's 3 people, there will be more people using the amenities, for example, using more toilet paper or simply water or making a bigger mess for people to clean up later. So I thought the fees were just for that. More people, there's more to take care of afterwards, so they make it more expensive, was my understanding of it. And also, I don't know too much about Tokyo. I've only stayed at the very cheap hotels, but I think outside of Tokyo, there are a lot of very cheap options, especially in Kyoto. Before the COVID, there was a lot of travelers coming to Japan, so there were more and more hotels built, and even today, there are a certain number of hotels for tourists to stay at. So I'm pretty sure you will be able to find the perfect price range hotel for you, hotel or ryokan or an Airbnb or a private whatever it is. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to find something that suits your budget.
And number 10,
Last
cooperate with the police. This may actually be a no-brainer, especially if you're coming from a foreign country. But what you might not understand is the laws are very different here in Japan and how the police interpret those laws. So whatever rights you think you have, you might want to put that on hold when you come to Japan. One of those rights is your right to privacy. Police here in Japan have the rights to stop you, check your ID, and ask you questions just if they think you look suspicious. It might sound ridiculous, but that's just how it is in Japan. And if you don't cooperate, there's a high chance that they can detain you and hold you in the police box, like the one behind me right here. In fact, I've been stopped a few times throughout my 15 years in Japan, and talking with my other friends who live in Tokyo, they've been stopped as well. If you guys have any experience with the police in Japan, let me know in the comment section. So the moral of the story is, if you get stopped by the police, just cooperate with them if you don't want to get held up for any longer, even if you didn't do anything wrong. And always carry your ID or at least a copy of it. Oh, and if they do ask to search your pockets, yes, it's actually not legal for them to check it, but if you don't allow them to search your pockets, again, they might treat you as suspicious and hold you in the police box. So if you guys don't want any trouble, just cooperate with the police. I know it sounds a bit strange, but it'll save you a lot of time in the long run.
Well, this is also really interesting for me too, because again, I grew up in Japan. This was common sense for me. Police stopping you to ask you questions in Japanese is called shokumu. It's something that commonly happens, so I did not know that this is surprising. But I would absolutely agree with Paolo about this. It's just much faster to just cooperate. I hardly have had any experience of police stopping me. I know a few friends who train in Iaido, the katana martial arts, like I do, being stopped because they carry around katana outside, and sometimes police will stop you to ask you what you're holding onto inside the katana bags, but I've never had such experience before. What I have though experienced before is when I was a high school student and was riding a bicycle to school, there were some police that would stop me suddenly and ask me for the number of bicycles. Whenever you buy a bicycle, you would usually go in some kind of insurance, and the insurance, they have the numbers on them, and the police are looking for stolen bicycles, so they would check your number to see if that bicycle is not the stolen one, and they would just say thank you very much for your cooperation and you're allowed to go. But it does take a lot of time though. That took me like, I don't know, it could take maximum about 15 minutes, so it is very, very irritating. But you would look very suspicious if you said, no, I don't have that time, I need to go immediately, when they're saying they need your help. So it's very frustrating, I believe, for many of you. But again, just to save your time, the most is to just cooperate with them. And a lot of Japanese people, to be honest, are really, really frustrated about the police doing these things to you too. So if you go on the internet, there's a lot of websites that have all the information of what is legal and what is illegal done by the police. So for example, if the police does this to you, you can say this back to them because there's a law that says this, and all of the information, on websites and such. Although I have never had the experience of being asked so many questions, there are some people who suffer from it. So I guess this is something that the local people in Japan also experience and have trouble with too. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. Not only do I not know so much about traveling in Japan because I'm Japanese, but I also don't know too much about Tokyo either. So watching Paolo's video was really, really informative for me too, and I learned so many new things. And because I do receive a lot of requests though, I am hoping to try to make more videos talking about traveling in Kyoto. I think my team and I will probably be making a video soon talking about how much money it will take for a day in Kyoto. But if you're interested in traveling before coming to Kyoto, I've made a lot of videos talking, for example, the differences between shrines and temples, some history about Kyoto, some fun facts about Kyoto and such. So if you're interested in coming to Kyoto too, my channel will probably be the best place to find information. So I hope you can check out out my other videos. And I'll see you in my next React video. 皆さんどうもありがとうございました。Thank you so much for watching. See you again soon. Bye bye.